The sleeping giant. The Nexus station floated peacefully in the void between star systems, its crystalline spires catching the light of distant suns. For 400 years, this massive structure had served as the heart of galactic civilization. 5 great alien races had built it together as a symbol of their unity and wisdom. The Scalians with their reptilian cunning, the ethereal Vorthani with their energy manipulation, the mechanical Chronix with their perfect logic, the plant-like Silvari with their patience, and the insectoid Zephyrians with their hive-mind coordination. Ambassador Klex adjusted his ceremonial robes as he walked through the station's corridors. His scaled green skin reflected the soft blue lighting, and his vertical pupils scanned the data pad in his clawed hands. The report was routine, just another survey of a distant star system. The scouts had found yet another primitive species on the third planet of a yellow star they called Sol. The species called themselves humans. They had barely reached their own moon with chemical rockets. Their technology was laughably simple. They still used fossil fuels and nuclear fission. Their weapons were crude projectiles and explosives. Most amusing of all, they were divided into hundreds of separate nations that constantly fought among themselves. Klex entered the council chamber where representatives from all 5 races gathered for their monthly meeting. The chamber was enormous, with each delegation seated in their preferred environment. The Scalians enjoyed warm, humid air. The Vorthani floated in fields of pure energy. The Chronix sat motionless in perfect geometric arrangements. The Silvari grew from the floor itself, their root systems intertwined. The Zephyrians buzzed softly as their collective consciousness processed information. General Thyros, the current military coordinator, stood at the center addressing the assembly. His metallic Chronix body gleamed as he spoke in precise, calculated tones. The galactic peace had lasted so long because they followed simple rules. Advanced species were invited to join the coalition. Primitive species were monitored but left alone until they developed faster than light travel. Klex raised his hand to speak. The humans present an interesting case, he said. They show signs of rapid technological advancement, but they remain fragmented and violent. Perhaps we should establish contact earlier than usual. High Counselor Zephyr's compound eyes gleamed as the Zephyrian hive mind considered this. Their collective voice resonated through the chamber. The humans are too primitive and too dangerous. They would bring chaos to our ordered galaxy. We recommend continued observation from a distance. The other races murmured their agreement. The decision was made quickly, as most decisions were in the coalition. Earth would be left alone for another few centuries. The humans would either destroy themselves or eventually become civilized enough to join galactic society. What none of them knew was that humanity had already detected their presence. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert, Dr. Marcus Webb stared at the massive screens surrounding his hidden laboratory. The facility had been built in secret by a coalition of Earth's greatest nations after they had intercepted alien communications 15 years earlier. The message had been simple but terrifying. Humanity was being watched and judged by creatures beyond their comprehension. Marcus was a thin man with wild gray hair and eyes that burned with intensity. He had spent his entire career studying theoretical physics, but everything changed the day they detected the alien signals. He had dedicated his life to preparing humanity for contact, whether peaceful or hostile. The laboratory bustled with activity as hundreds of scientists worked around the clock. They had made incredible breakthroughs by studying the alien communications. Faster than light travel was no longer theoretical. They had developed it and tested it in secret. New materials stronger than anything previously imagined. Energy sources that made nuclear power look like candlelight. Commander Zara Chen entered the lab wearing the dark blue uniform of the newly formed Earth Defense Command. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and the kind of steady gaze that inspired confidence in others. She had been chosen to lead humanity's first interstellar fleet, though most of the world didn't even know such a fleet existed. "The alien coalition thinks we are primitive," she said to Marcus as she examined his latest weapon designs. "They believe we pose no threat to their perfect order." Marcus smiled grimly. That assumption will be their greatest mistake. We have advantages they cannot imagine. They have grown soft during centuries of peace. They fight with elegant energy weapons and sophisticated shields. We fight with whatever works. The weapon he showed her looked crude compared to alien technology. It was essentially a massive magnetic accelerator that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The aliens would expect plasma beams and particle cannons. They would not expect simple chunks of metal moving at significant fractions of light speed. Zora nodded approvingly. How many ships do we have ready? 200 combat vessels completed, Marcus replied. Another 300 in various stages of construction, all hidden throughout the solar system, where alien sensors cannot detect them. The ships were indeed hidden well. Some floated in the asteroid belt, camouflaged as space rocks. Others hid behind moons or in the shadows of gas giant planets. A few were even buried beneath the ice of Europa and Enceladus. Each vessel was designed with one purpose: to shock the aliens into recognizing humanity as equals rather than subjects. Meanwhile, on Nexus Station, the routine continued unchanged. The alien races maintained their territories, traded their resources, and resolved disputes through careful diplomacy. They had forgotten what it meant to face a real threat. Their weapons were designed for show rather than effectiveness. Their tactics were based on centuries-old protocols. Their ships were built for comfort and efficiency rather than survival. Ambassador Klex received another report about the humans. Their radio signals showed continued technological progress, but nothing that seemed dangerous. They had launched a few more primitive space missions. Their internet was full of entertainment and commerce rather than military communications. Everything appeared normal for a developing species. The Scalian diplomat filed the report without concern. He had seen dozens of species go through similar phases. Most took 500 to 1,000 years to develop interstellar capability. Many destroyed themselves with pollution or warfare before reaching that level. The humans would either join that sad statistic or eventually become civilized enough for contact. But humanity was not following the expected pattern. In the hidden shipyards of Earth, the final preparations were being made. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Defiance, watching her crew perform their duties with quiet efficiency. These were not the divided, chaotic humans the aliens observed through their distant sensors. These were individuals who had set aside national differences to face a common challenge. Lieutenant Sarah Kim monitored the communication systems that would coordinate the entire fleet. Sergeant Mike Torres prepared the marine units that would board alien vessels. Dr. Elena Vasquez calibrated the medical systems that would treat both human and alien wounded. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez fine-tuned the revolutionary engines that would carry them between stars. Each person understood their role in the plan. They would reveal themselves to the galaxy not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as equals demanding respect. The aliens expected humanity to develop slowly and predictably. They would discover that humans excelled at exceeding expectations. The moment came sooner than anyone anticipated. A Scalian scout ship entered the solar system for a routine survey. It was the same type of mission they had conducted hundreds of times before. The pilot expected to observe Earth from a safe distance, update his files, and return to report on continued human primitiveness. Instead, he found himself surrounded by 200 human warships that had appeared from nowhere. Commander Chen opened a communication channel to the terrified scout. "This is the Earth Defense Command," she announced calmly. "You are trespassing in human space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Scalian pilot was too shocked to respond coherently. "Impossible," he whispered. "The humans cannot have ships like this. Our sensors show you are still primitive." "Your sensors are wrong," Chen replied. "You have 1 hour to leave our system and deliver a message to your coalition. Humanity is no longer willing to be observed and cataloged like animals in a zoo. We demand recognition as equals and a seat at your Galactic Council." The scout ship fled toward Nexus Station faster than it had ever traveled before. Behind it, the human fleet melted back into the shadows of space. waiting for the galaxy's response. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the peaceful order that had lasted 4 centuries was about to face its greatest challenge. On Nexus Station, alarms began sounding for the first time in living memory. The era of galactic complacency was over. The nightmare from Earth had begun. The storm unleashed. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition began within hours of the Scouts' panicked report. The Great Council chamber buzzed with activity as representatives from all 5 races struggled to process what they had heard. Humans with faster-than-light travel. Humans with military fleets. Humans who dared to make demands of their betters. Empress Vorthak materialized at the center of the chamber, her energy form crackling with barely controlled power. She was the supreme leader of the coalition, chosen for her wisdom and restraint. But today, wisdom seemed insufficient to handle this unprecedented crisis. General Thyros displayed holographic images of the human ships as described by the terrified scout. The vessels appeared crude and angular, lacking the elegant curves of proper starship design. But their numbers were impossible to ignore. 200 ships where there should have been none. This is clearly some form of deception, declared High Counselor Zephyr. The Zephyrian hive mind processed possibilities at incredible speed. No species advances from primitive rockets to interstellar fleets in mere decades. They must have stolen our technology. Ambassador Klex studied the data with growing unease. His reptilian instincts were warning him of danger, but his rational mind refused to accept it. The humans had appeared peaceful in all their observations. Their entertainment showed them as emotional and chaotic, hardly the traits of a species capable of such rapid advancement. But Empress Vorthak had lived longer than any of them. She remembered the early days when the coalition was formed through conflict rather than diplomacy. "We underestimated them," she said quietly. "We assumed they would develop like every other species we have encountered. This assumption may have been our greatest error." The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. A fleet would be assembled to deal with the human problem. Not to destroy them entirely, but to demonstrate the overwhelming power of the coalition. The humans would be forced to accept their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. Admiral Zekros was chosen to lead the expedition. He was a veteran Kronex commander whose mechanical mind could calculate battle tactics with perfect precision. His fleet would consist of 50 of the coalition's most advanced warships, representing all 5 races. It was enough firepower to conquer entire star systems. The fleet departed Nexus Station with great ceremony. Energy beings danced through space as the Vorthani ships activated their drives. Crystalline Silveri vessels bloomed like flowers. Geometric Kronex dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation. Scalian cruisers slithered through the void. Zephyrian swarm ships buzzed with collective purpose. They expected to arrive at Earth and find the humans cowering before such a display of force. They expected negotiations, surrender, and a quick return to normalcy. They did not expect Captain Nova Sterling. Nova commanded the UES Retribution, one of Earth's most advanced destroyers. She was a woman who had earned her rank through merit rather than politics, known for her tactical brilliance and absolute fearlessness. When the alien fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system, she was waiting for them with 30 human ships. The numbers seemed impossible. 50 alien vessels against 30 human ships should have been a massacre. Admiral Zekros opened communications, confident in his superiority. "Primitive humans," he announced in his mechanical voice, "you will surrender immediately and accept coalition oversight of your development." Nova's response was not what he expected. "This is Captain Sterling of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space without permission. Leave now or face the consequences." The absurdity of the situation struck the alien admiral. A species that had been using chemical rockets was threatening ships that could destroy planets. Kronex logic circuits struggled to process such illogical behavior. "You cannot resist," Zekros replied. "Our shields can absorb any energy weapon you possess. Our hull plating can withstand nuclear explosions. Your primitive technology cannot harm us." Nova smiled grimly. "You're right. Our technology is primitive. That's what makes it dangerous. The battle began with the aliens firing warning shots. Brilliant energy beams lanced through space, designed to disable rather than destroy. They struck the human ships and were absorbed by shields that should not have existed. The Coalition had never shared shield technology with primitive species. But the human response was unlike anything in galactic warfare. Instead of energy weapons, they fired solid projectiles. Chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. The alien shields, designed to stop plasma and particle beams, were useless against simple kinetic energy. The first Scalian cruiser to be hit simply disintegrated. The metal slug punched through its shields and hull like they were made of paper. Atmosphere vented into space as the crew scrambled for escape pods. Admiral Zekros watched in shock as his perfectly calculated battle plan fell apart. The humans were not fighting according to accepted rules of galactic warfare. They used tactics that were crude but effective. When energy weapons failed to penetrate human shields, they switched to projectiles. When the humans adapted, they tried new approaches. Lieutenant James Rodriguez led a boarding party that captured a Zephyrian swarm ship. He was a Special Forces operative who had trained for this moment his entire career. His team moved through the alien vessel with brutal efficiency, using close combat weapons that the insectoid crew had never encountered. The Zephyrians were used to coordinated hive mind tactics. They could not adapt to human unpredictability. Individual humans made decisions without consulting others. They changed plans mid-battle. They sacrificed themselves for objectives that made no logical sense. Ghost, as Rodriguez was known to his team, reached the swarm ship's control center and discovered something that changed everything. The alien computers contained detailed files on dozens of other species that had been conquered or absorbed by the Coalition. The peaceful galactic government was built on the subjugation of those who refused to conform. Back on the Retribution, Captain Sterling received Rodriguez's data transmission with growing anger. The aliens had lied about everything. Their peaceful coalition was maintained through the threat of overwhelming force. Species that resisted were crushed. Those that submitted became junior partners with no real power. She opened communications to the remaining alien ships. "Now I understand," she said coldly. "Your peace is built on fear. Your order is maintained through oppression. You assumed we would be another species to catalog and control." Admiral Zekros tried to salvage the situation. "We offer partnership," he insisted. "Join the Coalition and share in galactic prosperity." "Under your terms," Nova replied. "Following your rules. Living in the shadow of your judgment. We reject your offer." The battle intensified as more human ships arrived from hidden positions throughout the solar system. The aliens found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered by opponents who fought without regard for their own safety. Human ships rammed alien vessels. Boarding parties captured enemy bridges. Suicide runs destroyed ships 10 times their size. But the most shocking moment came when Commander Zora Chen arrived with the main human fleet. 150 ships materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. The aliens had never seen such precise coordination from a species they considered chaotic and primitive. Chen opened communications to Admiral Zekros, who was now commanding a battered and demoralized fleet. "Admiral," she said calmly, "you came here to demonstrate your power. Instead, you have revealed your weakness. You have forgotten how to fight against an enemy who refuses to be intimidated." The Chronix Admiral processed this information with growing understanding. The Coalition had indeed grown soft during centuries of unchallenged dominance. Their weapons were designed for intimidation rather than effectiveness. Their tactics were based on overwhelming technological superiority rather than tactical skill. Empress Forthak herself materialized on the main screen, her energy form flickering with exhaustion. "Enough," she declared. "This conflict serves no one. What do you want from us?" Zara's answer was simple but revolutionary. "Recognition as equals. A voice in galactic affairs. The right to choose our own path without interference. and an end to your practice of forcibly civilizing species that refuse to conform to your standards. The negotiations that followed lasted for weeks, but the outcome was never in doubt. Humanity had proven that they could not be conquered or controlled. The galaxy would have to accept them as partners rather than subjects. High Counselor Zephyr spoke for many when the final treaty was signed. We expected to encounter another primitive species to guide toward enlightenment. Instead, we discovered a mirror that showed us what we had become: complacent, arrogant, weak. The Galactic Coalition was reformed with humanity as its sixth member race. The peaceful order that had lasted 4 centuries was replaced by something more dynamic and unpredictable. Species throughout the galaxy watched with fascination as the humans introduced concepts that had been forgotten. Innovation through conflict, strength through diversity, and growth through challenge. Ambassador Klex, now serving as liaison to Earth, often reflected on how wrong their initial assessment had been. The humans were not primitive. They were simply different. They had developed not in spite of their conflicts, but because of them. Their chaotic nature was not a weakness to be corrected, but a strength to be respected. Commander Chen, now Admiral of the Combined Human Coalition Fleet, stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the stars. The nightmare from Earth had indeed appeared in the galaxy. But like many nightmares, it had awakened everyone to truths they had been avoiding. The galaxy was no longer relaxed. It was alive with possibility, challenge, and the endless potential that came from embracing the unknown rather than fearing it. Humanity had not just joined galactic civilization. They had saved it from the stagnation of its own success. The age of human expansion had begun, and the universe would never be the same.